Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we're going to make a Alice in Wonderland inspired tumbler. My daughter Ava really liked the Spooky Witch tumbler. So I'm going to give this a similar base, but of course do a design that makes it hers. We're starting with a 16-ounce junior from the Steel Magnolia. This is a perfect cup for a kid. It has the wider top, but is still small at the bottom, so it fits in cup holders. And it has multiple lids that fit it as well. You can use the regular extra small lid, the screw-on, or you can also use the HydroFit 2.0, which is what my daughter will use, and I may occasionally steal it from her and put on a slim cozy lid, and it will also fit a 12-ounce slim can. We base painted it black and then went over with Maleficent, which is a gorgeous holographic black chunky mix from PDB Creative Studio. Gave this 2 coats of epoxy until it was smooth, and we are going to add on our Peekaboo Stencil. Now this is the same stencil as I used in the Spooky Witch Tumbler tutorial. I'll link that down below for y'all if you want to see how I created this to fit the tumbler perfectly. My focus in this tutorial is going to be how to get it over the curve at the bottom of the tumbler rather than creating the stencil, since I have already showed you that in a prior tutorial. So I'm adding on my transfer tape and just double checking to make sure that it's going to fit around this tumbler correctly. I'm going to cut off a little slither of that backing. And once I have it lined up on my tumbler, I'm going to press that exposed piece of stencil down. That way I can easily roll my tumbler onto the rest and get a really nice straight stencil. Now, as I'm rolling on, you'll notice that it is not sticking to the bottom portion of this tumbler, and that's exactly what I want, because we are going to trim a couple of pieces to help us, I guess, alter this to fit the bottom of this tumbler. And then I'm going to grab my heat gun to loosen up that vinyl and the transfer tape and almost sort of work like shrink wrap, I guess you can say, and just press that down over that little bevel as I am working my way around the tumbler. Now you may get some little creases, and that is okay, because once you take off that transfer tape, you can lift it up or use a craft knife and help trim that up and press them down. But since this is a stencil, I'm not super worried about it, as long as everything is pressed down pretty well to the tumbler, as not giving me any issues with my spray paint. After I remove the transfer tape from my stencil, I'm going to go back and just make sure that those little pieces at the bottom are flattened out. So I just lifted it up, and then I will use my heat gun to help reheat it just a tiny bit, not too much because it will stretch and break, but just enough to where it will flatten out whenever I press it down to the tumbler. Once I have that stencil pretty nice and flat, I'm going to grab some blue and purple spray paint and just sort of spritz those to combine them together. I wasn't really sure if it would make a difference if we did different colors on the base, but I thought I would give it a shot. Honestly, I don't see that it made any difference after we added on our micas, so just doing one solid color would probably be good for this. I added a little blob of Tack It to the tumbler, and I'm going over with a medium size all over makeup brush. This will get really nice and smooth coverage, and you don't want to get this too streaky. The streaks will show underneath your micas, so you're really going to want to try to stretch this Tack It out and get nice and even coverage, and you can do so by going back and forth with quick brush strokes in the same direction. Once you have really good coverage on there, you're going to go in with your heat gun and dry that up. It only takes a few seconds with the heat gun, or you can set it to the side for 20 to 30 minutes and allow it to dry on its own. We used Pixie in our Spooky Witch Tumbler tutorial, but this time I am going to use Fairy Godmother. This has more of a rainbowish holographic effect, and Pixie has more of like a gold tone to it. I really wish I would have went heavier with the Fairy Godmother because it really gave some awesome contrast in between our black spider webbing and the purple. And Fairy Godmother comes with a shaker lid on top. This is definitely necessary if you're going to add it into your epoxy to do like a top coat like I do with Diamond Dust a lot. But if you are applying it to a tumbler using the Tack It method or something, you'll definitely want to pop that top off so that you can get a little bit more to add on. I'm going in with Mysterious, which is one of the micas that came in the latest PDB Creative Studio resin box. So this is not yet available on the website as of this tutorial. I will have it listed down in the description below, as well as a couple of alternatives if you want a really awesome purple mica. And like I said, I wish that I would have went heavier on the Fairy Godmother, and honestly we didn't even have to add the mica on because the purple underneath looked really pretty with Pixie just kind of sprinkled onto it. But once I had all of my micas on, I grabbed my Color Shot matte clear spray paint and went and gave this a light coat of spray paint to seal all of that in, and then I removed my stencils. I have always used the Hobby Lobby brand temporary vinyl to do all of my stencils. For whatever reason, here lately, it has been extremely difficult to work with. I don't know if they changed how it's made or what is going on, but it's really stiff. It almost works as if it's permanent vinyl, and it's leaving residue behind on my tumblers. Luckily, since this was a holographic glitter, a black holographic, I had some black holographic foil from Southern Belle Glitter, and this foil is called Black Ice, and it blended perfectly into our Maleficent glitter from PDB Creative Studio. So everywhere that there was adhesive left behind from my temporary vinyl, I just went in with my Black Ice fools and kind of rub that in on top as if I would if I were applying fools to a design on the tumbler. And truthfully, I normally would not do this, but since it was a dark color, I figured that this you would not even be able to tell, and it is for my daughter that's going to be carried for a month before she commands a new design for Christmas. So since we added on the fools to some residue that was left behind, I did not want to risk any of my glitter from... if you saw my Witchy Woman Tumbler tutorial, then you know that I forgot to add on a coat of epoxy, and a matte clear sealer before doing my double-sided adhesive and glitter. So we had glitter that stuck in places I really didn't want it to go. So for this one, I'm adding on a layer of epoxy after our Peekaboo, and I added in some new Dawn glitter from COLORFLEX just to give this a little bit more color and dimension. And as that was drying, we went ahead and grabbed our Wonderland inspired decals from Etsy. I will have that linked down below for y'all, and imported those into our design space. Now, although this did turn out pretty cute, I do not suggest using these files. There are tons of little particles that look like glitter and a lot of very small, like little sprigs of hair and whiskers and everything that come a part of this, and it will not do well in print to cut. However, if you do use it, just know it will be a hot mess, but it can be cleaned up because I still use them on the tumbler. I also found this We're All Mad Here decal from Etsy, and I created a 0.035 offset, highlighted both the original and the offset, and selected slice so I can get the outline. I have no clue why the outline is blue. Normally it's solid, but Design Space was just acting a fool the entire day that I was working on this, so I have no explanation for that, but it still cut okay. I used a square shape and added that in to the exact dimensions of my tumbler so that I can lay out my design and get the sizing correct on my print to cut images. Once I had all of those laid out, of course you can't cut them as you have them laid out because you can only cut to a certain dimension. But it gives you an idea of sizing, and you can either screenshot, take a picture with your phone so that you can remember the placement when you add it onto your tumbler. Or if you are using the Buttercraft matte printable vinyl as I do, it is my absolute favorite, then it's actually easily repositionable. Once you have everything laid out, just remove that shape in the background and send that over to your print to cut. And again, I am using the Buttercraft matte printable vinyl from Amazon for this. And for my decal, I used Shape Tape from Artistry, which is a double-sided adhesive. And for the outline of that, the offset, I used the gold metallic textured vinyl from TeckWrapcraft. Now, I want you to completely ignore that I have already added on the glitter to my Shape Tape for our main decal, because the glitter that I used was too light and it really just blended in with the tumbler and also blended in with the outline once I added it on. So I did have to sand it down and redo that. I thought it was going to be okay, so I did leave it and put a coat of epoxy on, and once I added on that offset is when I was like, no, this is not going to work and we're going to have to figure something else out. So we'll come back to that here in just a few minutes. But now we're going to add on our decals. I'm just placing them random on my tumbler, trying to remember how I had them in Design Space. And to get them to flatten out on that curve, I'm just applying a little bit of heat from my heat gun and very carefully working them down. You don't want any creases or to apply too much heat to where it messes with the adhesive on the back of the vinyl. So just remember to work slow and use very low heat when trying to flatten these out on a curved surface. After I had all of my decals placed on the tumbler, I sealed this twice with my Color Shot matte clear coat and then gave it one coat of epoxy before attempting to apply that offset. Now, like I said, we did not end up going with this color because once I got this gold offset on here, it really didn't stand out. It just blended into the cup and I wanted it to really pop. So I took off the offset and sanded it really well where our glitter was. Then gave it one very, very thin coat of epoxy over that area to cover up my sand marks. And then we went in with our Shape Tape, which is a double-sided adhesive. This one in particular is from ARTISTRY Epoxy. This is my favorite that I'd use because it is super sticky on both sides. It sticks really well to my tumblers, and it also really grabs a hold of glitters, micas, or even full flakes. You can put all kinds of different stuff on this double-sided tape. I used a sheet of transfer tape to apply that to my tumbler, and sometimes you'll have, depending on the stickiness of your transfer tape, you'll have it remove the paper covering the protective layer as well, and that's okay because we're going to apply all of our glitter at one time. If you don't want it to lift up the protective layer on top of your adhesive, then definitely take your piece of transfer tape and just stick it onto your clothes or skin, something to help remove the stickiness from it to where it's just enough to hold on to the Shape Tape but not enough to pull off that protective cover. Since I messed up on those first two colors, I let my daughter pick out her favorite bright color from my glitter collection, and she picked two. One is In the Deep from PDB Creative Studio, and the other Lovebirds from COLORFLEX. We just mixed those two together and applied them directly on top of our Shape Tape. I rubbed that in so I can get it nice and flat on top of that adhesive so that we can minimize the amount of epoxy layers we have to put on this before we add on our offset again. I knocked off the excess and then went in with this cheap bristle brush and brushed off any of that glitter that may have been caught in between the letters. Sealed this once with the matte clear coat. You don't need too much sealant on this because, again, the tape is super sticky. And then gave it one coat of epoxy before we went in with our offset. I had this offset lined up so perfect on top of the glitter. I have no clue why one side just went completely wonky and was off, but instead of taking 5 minutes to cut a new offset, I spent 15 to 20 very carefully lifting it up and placing it back in the spot that it should have been. Had this not been for my daughter and her actually seeing it and knowing I was making it for her, I definitely would have scrapped this one and started over before I even attempted to put the glitter on again, just because of the issues that I have had, and I didn't really care for the contrast between the black holographic and the purple mica. I don't feel like the spider webs stand out quite as much as what I wanted them to for the work that went into it. But that's fine, you know, because she had a huge smile on her face when I handed this to her. And my tutorials are not just for you to recreate my exact designs. It's to also share my experiences with things and help you learn from my mistakes, learn different color combinations that can or can't go with each other, and just be inspired or take ideas to create your own designs as well. After I repositioned that offset where it should be, we added on our final 2 layers of epoxy. And here is the final result. The glitter mix that we put on for the second time looked way better. It stood out and looked beautiful in contrast with the purples that we have going on, and just pulled everything together. I know this is not something that you would necessarily recreate to a T, so I hope there are some things from this tutorial that will help you create your own design. As always, all of the materials that I have used will be listed down in the description below, as well as some coupon codes for you. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to be notified of new tutorials in the future. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.